Humphrey Bogart has the distinction of playing both private eyes, considered the exemplars of American detective fiction. Sam Spade, created by Dashiell Hammett in his 1929 novel The Maltese Falcon, and Philip Marlowe, who made his debut in The Big Sleep 10 years later. Although Chandler was considered Hammett's successor as the leading practitioner of hard-boiled crime, Marlowe was not a carbon copy of Spade. Both characters were cynical and jaundiced, operating in a world where, as Chandler put it perfectly, the law is where you buy it. But where Marlowe was morally upright and utterly incorruptible, Spade dwelled in the gray area. He was not above sleeping with his partner's wife or with the prime suspect in his partner's murder, behavior that would have made Marlowe explode with self-loathing. You may have noticed in The Big Sleep, Bogart plays it much more like Sam Spade than the Dick and Chandler's fiction. On screen, Bogart created and perfected this new American archetype. Nobody has come close to equaling it in the intervening 70-some years. And who did Raymond Chandler envision as Philip Marlowe? Well, for a character who supposedly was born in Santa Rosa, California, you may be surprised that the actor Chandler wanted to play as Private Eye was Cary Grant. I sense a little wish fulfillment. Maybe it's because Chandler, who was born in the Midwest, was brought up and educated in England, and he never lost the sense of superiority it ingrained in him. He admitted to having a condescending attitude about America, and especially his adopted home, Los Angeles. Maybe that's why he saw British-born Archibald Leach as the embodiment of Marlowe. For me, the perfect guy to portray Chandler's pipe-smoking, chess-playing wiseacre would have been William Holden. If only Paramount had bought The Long Goodbye in 1953, the year Chandler's masterpiece was published, Holden would have been the perfect Marlowe. One memorable scene in The Big Sleep is just a throwaway in the book, and a complete departure from it. That rainy afternoon liaison with a dishy bookseller played by Dorothy Malone, that was concocted for the film. Malone has only a couple of minutes screen time, but she makes the most of them. Any longer, and we might have forgotten all about Lauren Bacall and Martha Vickers. Malone outvamps them both while doing very little. She embodies a bookish allure I call librarianism.
You begin to interest me, vaguely.
Yeah, I'm a private dick on a case.
Given the impact Malone made here, it's surprising Warner Brothers didn't see her as particularly sexy. In film noir, she played mostly straight-laced good girls in films like Flaxie Martin, Loophole, Private Hell 36, and Pushover. It wasn't until the mid-50s that Malone started steaming up the screen, playing a hot-to-trot officer's wife in Battle Cry, a sexy barnstormer in The Tarnished Angels, and a boozed-up, claws-out cougar in Written on the Wind, for which she'd win a Best Supporting Actress Oscar. Now, the bookstore in The Big Sleep, not Malone's, the one across the street, was based on a real bookstore known to every writer in Hollywood. The Satter Bookshop, owned by Stanley Rose, was the place for authors to get their books and periodicals, and other things, if you believe the legend. At the Satter, in his later shop, named for himself, Stanley Rose purportedly purveyed premium porn, to get all Elroy about it. Now, whether it was true or not, there's no doubt that's where Chandler got the idea for Geiger's side hustle. And while we're on the subject of bookstore clerks, let's give a big nod to Sonia Darren, who played Geiger's shifty shop girl, Agnes Logier.
You do sell books,
What do those look like? Grapefruit?
Darren, whose real name is Sonia Paskowitz, had a handful of credits before this, all in B pictures, all uncredited. Howard Hawks giving her this plum part proved two things. The woman could act, and she needed a new agent, because she didn't get an on-screen credit for this film either, which is a crime. She quit the business in 1950, probably out of frustration. But The Big Sleep would not be her sole contribution to American pop culture. Some of you might remember a precocious red-headed munchkin named Mason Reese, who became a bit of a cultural phenomenon in the 1970s. He parlayed his role as Pitch Kid for Underwood Deviled Ham. It's a Borgashmorg into a career on chat shows and sitcoms. Well, we have Sonia Darren to thank for that, since she is Mason Reese's mother. Lastly, we have Raymond Chandler to thank for everything big in crime fiction and film noir. In the wake of his first novel and the hit film it inspired, big became ubiquitous in titles. Should I even start? The Big Clock, The Big Heat, The Big Bluff, The Big Tip-Off, The Big Knife, The Big Combo, not to mention later homages like The Big Easy and The Big Lebowski. And that's just a sampling. It is a big list. Well, now's your chance to get big on the Noir Alley Facebook page and Twitter feed. Then join us back here next week when, you guessed it, we go big again. I'll be presenting director Joseph Losey's adaptation of a novel called Deadly Summit, renamed by United Artists, The Big Night. See you next week.